Alrighty, so it's that time of the year again where it's time to make one of the more controversial video of the year. And that, of course, is looking at where each MLS team is going to finish in the standings. And unlike in the previous year where my first video as part of these two-part prediction video looking at both conference where I start with the Eastern Conference, I'm actually going to look at the West first this year, and then tomorrow I'll make a video looking at where each Eastern Conference team is going to finish in the standings. But as always, let me just remind you that this is just my opinion, and that I know there's going to be people that watch this video and is going to type in the comment section that they hate my prediction, and that I clearly put this team way too low or maybe put this team way too high. But I also would like to say that if you actually watch my prediction last year in terms of the standings, and also watch my reaction to the prediction that I made last season, you will know that I got a lot of these teams wrong in terms of where I put. Like, there's times where I picked teams to be over here, and then it turns out they did not make it to the playoffs, or I picked team here where they did not make it to the playoffs, and they turns out to make it to the playoffs as one of the best team. I mean, that's the nature of MLS. It's a very unpredictable league, and I really feel like this year it's going to be the same thing, and I'm going to definitely get some of these prediction wrong. But with that being said, let us actually begin, and we of course will start with teams that I think is not going to make it to the playoffs. And the beauty of the way that both conferences have 14 teams is that, I have just enough room where I put the team that will make it to the playoffs here, and then the team will not make it to the playoffs over here. I don't even need to draw like a diagonal line or just kind of an imaginary red line that separate teams that will make it to the playoffs by the end of the season and teams that do not make it to the playoffs. So we start off with the first team that is not going to make it to the playoffs and finish bottom in the standings. And that, of course, is my team. Or at least one of my team. That is the San Jose Earthquakes. Now, I know in previous year, I have picked the Quakes to finish dead last. In fact, I think back in the 2018 season, I picked them. Or, no, I think in the 2019 season, I picked them to finish dead last. And I think they finished in 8th position and barely miss out on the playoffs on the final day. And when you look at some of the signings that they made this offseason, and also kind of look at the current squad, it's definitely a team that you wouldn't think that will finish dead last in the Western Conference. But here's the reason why I think they're going to finish dead last. And it's not just because of the fact that I'm a pessimistic Quakes fan, and I always put my team to finish dead last so that, I'm being very pessimistic, and that for ones that maybe they prove me wrong that they won't finish last. But the reason is Mateus Almeida. And, today, Almeida, once again, he spoke to the media and said that he is not happy with his situation with the Quakes, and that, he's not happy with the front office, with the lack of signing, and the ownership not giving him money. And, I've said this before, some of the things that he said, he's not wrong about that. I mean, the Quakes ownership is definitely one of the worst ownership in the league, and, the lack of spending is definitely a big problem with this team. But at the same time, it's just not a good look, and especially it's not a good look in terms of the fans and especially the players. Where if you're a player of that Quakes team and your head coach have even said that he wants to leave within 10-month time, do you even want to play for him, or at least really just play hard for him for the rest of the season? Absolutely not. So I just have a feeling this year, even with some of the good players that we have, they're going to underperform because of the fact that Almeida, he doesn't even care about this team anymore. He's just only there to count down the days before he leaves. And this is also why I've said before, I think Almeida is the biggest liability for this upcoming season. And I haven't even got to the fact that he's continued to try out these crazy formation and putting guys out of position when they clearly do not play in that spot. But, the bottom line is he's just trying to sabotage this team, and that, again, I just feel like the front office should have let him go this offseason, or at least last year, because he is way past his expire date. And if there's one thing we know about this league, is that you need good coaching to be success in this league. I mean, there are occasions where you can have enough talent in the squad where coaching maybe doesn't matter, but there's so many cases where you need to have a good coach and have a good coach that believe in you, that can be successful. And right now, with what Almeida is saying, I mean, this is just not going to give any confidence to these players whatsoever, that they're even going to try with him. And this is also why I've said back in my hot sit index, he's probably the first head coach that most likely is going to be out this season. And especially, I feel like, for the front office right now, I want to say that they should fire him, but you kind of can't, because the season is about to start. You don't want to fire a head coach before the season begin, and especially if you fire a head coach right now and there's like 3 days of the season, that could even end more disastrous than fire him or not fire him at all. But really, it's just that they should have let him go at least in the off season, and clearly bring in a guy that with some of the moves that the Quakes have made, it is clearly used for the next head coach rather than what Almeida really wants for this team. Now, at number 13, I'm going to say it's going to be the Houston Dynamo. And actually, from now on, I'm just going to go with an initial, because I don't want to write out the full name. I mean, it's not because I'm lazy, but it's mainly because, I want to get this video done with. And also, I just realized the camera is kind of fading a little bit. Oh, there we go. It has refocused. But yeah, the Dynamo, I think they're going to finish 13th because, they're clearly rebuilding. I mean, I know they're going to try to avoid finishing dead last for 3 years in a row, but when you look at some of the signings that they have made, and that it seems like they're once again putting a couple of placeholder in terms of this deep rebuild that they are going through. And then there's also that rumor of whether or not if Hector Herrera is going to be coming into this team, which if he is coming into this team, then I guess they could definitely do better than what I predict them to finish 13th place. But like I said, this team is clearly in a rebuild right now, and that in terms of the talent, they just don't have a lot of good talent to compete against some of the best team, or even maybe some of the team that is fighting for a playoff position. So yeah, they're going to finish 13 in the standings. But now in 12th place, and this might surprise some people, but I'm actually going to put RSL in 12th place. And I think last year I also put RSL very low in the standings, and there's been times where RSL has defied my thinking that they're going to finish as one of the worst team in the league, and it turns out they actually did relatively well. And last season was also a good example, with all the chaos that was going on, and them not having an owner, made a run to the Western Conference Final. But again, the reason why I said that they're not going to finish well is that what they did in the playoffs, as amazing as it is, it doesn't work when it comes to the regular season. And I still have doubt in terms of them hire Pablo Mastroeni on a permanent deal and make him a permanent head coach, because when he took over this team, this was not really an RSL team that was performing anything better than what they saw under Freddie Juarez. I mean, sure, yes, it made the team a little bit more entertaining, but it also made the team basically having a lot of defensive flaws. I mean, there are times where they're just giving up goals for fun because of the way that Mastroeni's loved to try to go with this high octane style. And then by the time he realized that, yeah, I don't have the defense to run with, he decided to kind of lock it down a little bit. And while they kind of got away with it in the playoffs, again, I don't think that will work out in the regular season. And not to mention, this roster that they have, it's still not a roster that I think could make it to the playoffs, especially with how this season, because we have an extra team in the Western Conference, and the West is pretty much like the East this year, where getting into the playoffs is going to be harder than ever before, because only half of the team would make it. I think under this format, if there's, let's say, a team like, for example, Nashville came into the league last year and they finished near the top, then RSL wouldn't have made it, even with the miracle goal that they scored in on decision day. But as I said, this squad, I just don't think it's good enough. And unless when the new ownership started to maybe finally show their intention of spending money, and also continue to develop that academy and pump in some good players, this is definitely a roster that I think is going to finish near the bottom of the standings. Now in 11th place, I'm going to go with Austin FC. So again, Austin, in the second year in life in MLS, I think this year that it's going to be an improvement, but it's not at a level where they're going to be a playoff contender. I think in order for them to be a playoff contender, they need to sort out that defense. Like, that defense is what's holding back this team to potentially be a playoff contender, because when you look at going forward on the attack, you know, they have some good pieces with the likes of Jurusi, Fagun, there's Dominguez, and even Musa Jite. But at the back, you also have some really bad pieces that are still there, and were one of the reasons why last season they weren't a very good defensive team. I mean, if it wasn't for Brad Stuver, literally in the first half of the season going to Stegen mode, this team would have given up a lot of goals. And again, the fact that they did not really address that is a little bit of a concern. But you know, if they can of course address that maybe in the summer transfer window, they could maybe make a good run in their second year. But as I said, I don't think they're ready just yet. They're maybe just about a year or two away to be a playoff contender in the West. But now moving to 10th place, I'm gonna go with FC Dallas, and this is the same reason I'm gonna say with Austin. You know, for Dallas, I feel like yes, they are making some good moves, especially going forward the attack to kind of improve, to get themselves back into the playoffs. But I really think the attack was not the issue for this Dallas team. I mean, yes, they did had some liability on the attack. Franco Hara comes into mind, but I think the biggest liability still in this FC Dallas team is that defense. And again, just like what I said with Austin, the fact that they did not address that this offseason is a bit of a concern. And not to mention, they also lost Justin Che to Hoffenheim. He was definitely one of the better defender on that back line for FC Dallas. Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a concern. And again, unless if Jimmy Maurer, who had last season had shown that he can be a decent goalkeeper and have at times maybe bailed out FC Dallas a couple of times with his good goalkeeping performance, I just don't think this is going to be a team, even with an attack with the likes of Velasco and Ariola. I just think that that defense is going to hold them back in terms of making the playoffs. Now, in 9th place is going to be the LA Galaxy. And again, you know, defense. It's like this team, you know, I feel like I've said this every single year, and I'm saying it again, you know, that back line is not only not an MLS Cup kind of caliber back line, but it's not even a playoff contender back line. Like, that back line at best is mediocre. And I know going forward, you know, them getting Douglas Costa is potentially an upgrade, but you know, for me, I still don't think that is going to be the case. And it's not because I hate the Galaxy. Well, yeah, I do hate the Galaxy, but for me, I just feel like, you know, with Douglas Costa, especially his form in these last couple of years, and also with his off the field situation and the injuries problem that he has, I don't know if he's going to be the star man of this team. I mean, the star man of this team is still Chicharito going forward, and you hope that maybe guys like Kevin Cabral and Samuel Grandsir can finally start to get things going, to put the pressure off of Chicharito. And not to also mention Joveljic, another guy that they bought last season, who I'm not sure if he's still on the team, but if he's still on the team, he needs to also pick up the slack there too. But like I said, the bottom line of the Galaxy potentially not making the playoffs is that back line. Like, if that back line is going to give up tons of goals once again, this team is not going to make it to the playoffs, even if Chicharito is going to once again play out of his minds like he did last season. Now, in 8th place, I'm going to go with Colorado. And this is actually a last-minute change, because originally I actually put the Rapids over here. And I feel like this year, just like last season, where, you know, as I predicted last season, the West, it really kind of came down to the final day in terms of deciding the teams that was around the bubble, and I feel like it's going to be the same case again. And I originally had the Rapids over here on the left side, but recently I did change it and move them to the right side, because I really am concerned about how is this team going to score enough goals to maintain what they did last season. I mean, don't get me wrong. Last season, I'm going to forever say that was definitely not a fluke, even though I know some people are saying it more, especially what happened tonight in their early exit and in their embarrassing exit in the hands of Comunicaciones. But you know, the attack and the goal scoring has been a problem. I mean, it was a problem last season but it feels like it's now a bigger problem this year because of the lack of number 9 on this team, and with the way that their ownership have openly said that they don't have the money to spend that number 9 position. This team could be facing an issue in terms of that. And also, not to mention, even though I know Colorado has all 3 DP, and ideally when you have a team that has all 3 DP and they already built a winning culture, ideally you would think that would be good. But then you just realize this is the Colorado Rapids, and that this ownership alongside with the Quakes ownership are considered one of the worst ownership in the league and one of the cheapest ownership in the league. And yeah, that is kind of what's holding back this Rapids team. Because if the Rapids actually have an ownership that is ambitious and believe that these last couple of years of winning means that they can really start to compete for MLS Cup, they would spend that money and figure out that number 9 position problem. But because of the fact that that's not the case, yeah, I just feel like that couldn't really hold them down. And this is even if Robin Fraser is performing some miracle work with this team. Now, in 7th place, I'm going to go with Minnesota. So, again, I originally had the Loons finishing just outside of the playoffs. And the Loons, I feel like is going to be the same thing I've said about Colorado, where I am still concerned about their attack. And especially from what I've heard from the preseason, the goal scoring is still a problem for this team. And, I hope that maybe when they got Luis Amarilla back into this team, that means that he can at least maybe contribute in terms of the goal scoring. But it is definitely worrying, the fact that goal scoring is still an issue with this team. And what's also kind of worrying about this team, besides the goal scoring, because I think that's kind of been the off-season talk and the biggest concern with this team heading into the new year. But I think one thing that not many people have talked about, but I'm starting to kind of aware of it, is the back line and the defense of this team. I mean, don't get me wrong, Michael Boxall and Bakay Debasi is still a good backline partnership, but it just feels like, we don't have a lot of depth in terms of those two positions, and both of those guys are definitely hitting into their 30s. And not to mention Romain Métanire, he might not be back for this team for a bit after he suffered that hamstring injury against the Portland Timbers. And yeah, I mean, this is a team that, the back line could maybe be an issue as the season goes along, especially in the latter part, if those older guys are starting to kind of run out of steam. But, the prime issue with this team is definitely the goal scoring. And I think, for me, I feel like it's just going to be enough for them to get into the playoffs. But if that goal scoring is going to be a problem, or if they look like they were last season, which is getting off to an 0-4 start, I don't think this team is going to make it to playoffs. Like, don't let the 5th place finish last season distract you from the fact that they were literally 1 goal away from missing the playoffs. If the Galaxy would have scored that 4th goal to win the game, Minnesota would have been out of the playoffs, and that would have been a catastrophic kind of failure for a team that was an MLS Cup contender heading into last season. Now, in 6th place, I'm going to go pick the Vancouver Whitecaps. So for the 2nd year in a row, I'm going to say that the Whitecaps is going to finish the same position as they did last year, because I believe in the Vanni Sartini hype. I mean, I know some people might because some people say that was just maybe a small sample size with Sartini kind of come into this team and put all the magic and even saying the right thing to motivate his team. But I think that's just a good sign of a good head coach. I mean, when you're a head coach and you're motivated at the position that you are, and you're able to motivate your players to play hard for you every single game, that's a good sign that you're a good head coach, and you can definitely get your team to be a playoff contender, even if you're when you look at the squad that you have, might not be a playoff contender. I mean, when you look at this squad, I think it definitely is a playoff contender, especially they figure out the attack by finding a great number 9 in Brian White, and then also finally finding their missing piece in the number 10 position in Ryan Gull. And then they also have a very underrated back line too. Now, the concern I will say about the Whitecaps, beside what I did kind of say that, even though I said I believe in Vanni Sartini, it's going to be interesting to see what happened when this team does go through a tough stretch and how he's going to respond, because he didn't have to deal with that last season when he was an interim head coach. But the other concern I have with this Whitecaps team is the goalkeeper situation. And again, I know that they locked Thomas Hassel to a long-term contract, but we'll see whether or not if Hassel, I don't expect him to be like anything like Crepeau, because, and nobody can replicate what Crepeau can do in net for Vancouver. But it's going to be interesting to see, now he is the starter and he's still a relatively young goalkeeper. Can he take that responsibility? And can he maybe even look like what he was in the MLS's back tournament, where that was kind of the tournament that really buy me some stock for Thomas Hassel, of him being one of the better goalkeeper in the future. So that's going to be interesting to see. But I still think that this is going to be a playoff team, and that I think the Whitecaps are starting to finally get into an era where they're going to be a regular playoff contender, and that deep rebuild that they've been going through for the past couple of years has finally paid off now. But now moving to 5th place, it's going to be LAFC. So for LAFC, again, even with the talent that they had, I am still concerned about the depth of this team, and especially the defense of this team, where, again, they didn't really fix a lot in terms of the back line. I mean, sure, yes, they did get Maxime Crepeau from the Vancouver Whitecaps, which I think that's going to be a huge improvement in terms of they're not going to concede as much goal as they did, because he knows how to bail out a bad back line during his time with the Vancouver Whitecaps. But still, I do have concern about that defense, and I'll also have concern, about this attack too, where last season, while this attack definitely was looking like one of the better attack from last year, the issue with the attack is that they just had problem in terms of finishing. And it's hard to believe I'm saying this, because they have a guy in Chicho Arango that really light up the league last season, and probably could have won the Golden Boot if he was there for the full year. They still have Carlos Vela, who, this might be his swan song season with LAFC, but there's the concern of if he can stay healthy. And then even they have Brian Rodriguez, who, I don't know if they're going to maybe move on from him in the future. But yeah, I mean, I think besides a lot of people focus on how this defense is a big setback of this team, don't forget about this attack, and we shall see whether this attack can go back to the lethal attack that we see LAFC from the past couple of years. But one thing I will know is that they're not going to finish outside the playoffs. Like last year was a catastrophic failure in their center, and they no doubt last season deserved the title of the most disappointing team in the league. And I think this year they're going to be bouncing back and kind of have almost like an Atlanta United type of season last year. Remember when Atlanta completely stalled out in their 3rd year, and then they bounced back in their 4th year and finished in 5th place? LAFC is going to do the same thing this year and finish in the 5th position. Now at number 4, it's going to be Sporting KC. So, despite the fact that they do not have Alan Pulido for the rest of the season, I think this team is still going to be considered a top 4 team. I mean, that also means that they better hope that Daniel Sharaway will not have kind of like what they saw back in 2019 after he kind of exploded in 2018. He basically went to become one of the most cursed player in terms of goal scoring in the league. And they also hope that Johnny Russell can continue to carry this team. But other than that, I'm excited to see how this newly structured backline they did, and especially with the way that some of the signings that they made are clearly thinking about the future, and them trying to get younger and trying to almost replace the old core that they currently have. But again, this is a team that I think is going to be a playoff team, though I don't think they're going to be finished near the top 3 spot, because something tells me Peter Vermes is going to try to run this team to the ground. And that, yeah, I mean, unless if Peter Vermes can finally understand that you can't just put the same player every single game and not make subs, that is kind of a big concern for this team, especially heading into the playoffs. And also, I think I've said it before in my emotion/expectation index, Sporting KC fans don't care about what happened in the regular season. It's all about what happened in the postseason, where years of futility and years of heartbreak. Can this be finally the year when they do make it to the dance, no matter what seed they are, to actually go all the way and be an MLS Cup champion for the first time since 2013? Now, finishing in third position, it's going to be the Portland Timbers. So, re-signing Sebastian Blanco was huge this offseason, but, there's the question of his health coming into this year. But, even though the Timbers might not have Blanco, I think last season they showed that they can still be a lethal team going for on the attack. Now, the reason why I didn't really rank them as high as they did last year is because if I rank them in first place, yeah, Timbers fans are not going to be happy with me, because the way that it feels like whoever I predict finish first in the West, especially these last couple of years, they tend to not finish very well. Like, I think I predicted Timbers to finish first. Oh, they finished in fourth position, which is not bad. But then in the previous year, I predicted LAFC to finish first, and then they finished seventh in the standing. And then even going back to 2019, when I put Sporting KC in first, Sporting KC basically finished 11 and didn't even make it to the playoffs. So it's something about, that number one position, and I know there's two other Western Conference team fan base are watching this video, and they're sweating the fact that I'm going to put them in number one, and that it turns out that they're not going to do so. But at least if you're a Timbers fan, you're basically spare of my potential kind of curse of putting a team in the number one position, and they end up to fail spectacularly. But again, I think there'll still be a good team, and this is also another team like Sporting KC. They don't care about what happened in the regular season. It's all about what happened in the playoffs, and can they make another cup run like they did in 2021, going all the way to MLS Cup final. Now, in second place, it's the Seattle Sounders, and there's really not a lot of explanation of this. I mean, I know the Sounders have probably the most lethal team in the league, but just something tells me that it's not by accident now that they finished second place for the past 5 years. Like, it's just, it feels like it's just in the Seattle Sounders DNA, the fact that they're gonna finish second in the Western Conference. And honestly, unless if they do start to finish maybe different than second place, I'm just gonna put the Sounders in second place, because it's kind of remarkable, the fact that they always finish in second, no matter how good the quality of the team is. And I feel like that's going to be the same case where, I think they're going to be once again like last season, spending most time in first place, but somehow in some way they might hit a bad run and somehow finish it in second place once again in the Western Conference. But I don't think Sounders fan would bother. I mean, as long as if this year in the playoffs they can make amends of that, they're really their first ever shock playoff loss in the playoffs in their franchise history, they would be happy, even if they're going to finish second once again in the standings. Which now move on to who I'm going to unfortunately put them in first place, and I'm sorry in advance that I put this team in first place. And then, of course, is Nashville, the team that just moved from the East to the West, that I picked them to finish first place. And again, apologies to Nashville fans in advance that I put them in first, because most likely they're probably not going to finish well this season. But there's a legitimate reason why I put them in first place. I mean, first, their defense is probably the best defense in the league. Their midfield is definitely very underrated. And then also going forward on the attack, I mean, having a MVP candidate in Hani Mukhtar that has been proven that he can definitely carry the team on his back. And then not to mention, from what I also heard from Nashville, of how Ake Loba has really turned it up in the preseason and started to maybe live up to the DP tag that he has. And you get a team that could definitely finish top in the Western Conference. Like, this is a team that, I know I've said before, where with them moving to the West, they're going to have to face those brutal travel schedule. But you know what? I don't think it really faced them, especially, last season. There's a reason why they only lost 4 games last season. Like, I mean, yes, one of the reasons is that they draw a lot of games, but still, they have shown that tenacity to not lose games. And when you show that tenacity up to not lose game and able to salvage, restore, and also winning your home game, you can have a team that can finish in first place. Like last season, that Nashville team could have finished first in the East if they maybe cut down like half of the draws that they had with the same amount of losses that they have. So yeah, I have a feeling this is a Nashville team that could definitely finish in first place. Although I will say that even if Nashville cut down half of the losses, they probably won't finish first place, because New England did had that record-breaking season when they also only lost one more game than Nashville and won way more game than what Nashville did. But they'll at least be finished respectively in second. And again, in a normal year where you don't have one team in your conference have a record-breaking year, you can definitely finish in first place in the standings. So there you have it. That is pretty much it for my prediction of the Western Conference. And again, if I jinx where your team is going to finish in the standings events, especially here on the left side, I do apologize that, but that's how I see it. And yeah, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of it? Do I put some teams a little bit too high? Do I put some team a little bit too low? And in 9 months' time, we'll see whether or not if I get, well, actually not 9 months' time, but 8 months' time in October. We're going to take a look back at these predictions and see how many I, of course, got wrong. I mean, spoiler alert, probably a lot I'm going to get it wrong in terms of this. But either way, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and also let me know in the comments below your prediction for the Western Conference. As I said, tomorrow I'll do the prediction for the Eastern Conference table. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.